poker is a game of life, really, when you think about it. If you take it as a whole, when you're born, whether you're born into a rich family or a poor family, doesn't always depend on the success that you'll achieve. You're handed a deck of cards, and how you play them depends on whether you make a success or a failure. You can't always foresee the future. You can't always foresee when you're sitting at a table playing poker. So you have to rely on your judgment, on your experience, and experience of life comes into that, meeting different people, different situations. It teaches you how to learn from your mistakes, decide where the future's going to take you. And you must, I think the most important thing of all is that it teaches you how to win, and it teaches you how to lose.
If poker was a colour, what would the colour be and why?
I guess it depends on your personality, really. Like, if you're quite an aggressive person, you obviously associate it with the violent colours like red, or if you're quite passive, you'd look for the stereotypical passive colour of being blue. But I suppose if you want to ask that, it's more looking at your personality, because poker is such a personalised game. So if you think of yourself, what colour do you think that you would be representing? And then that would probably very likely match your poker persona.
I don't think poker has any particular colour, but if it were to have one, it'd probably be black and red, due to the association of the game with red cards, black cards, poker tables, and the chips you play with as well.
I don't think you can necessarily define poker by a colour. I think it all depends on what's happening around the table at the time. I think that poker can be any colour. Say you're tilting, or you've had a cooler, then you could be red, you could be angry. If you're running smooth and you're feeling relaxed, you can be blue, calm blue. Any colour really, depends on the situation, whatever situation you're in.
Ice white, because you leave emotion outside the door and you concentrate entirely on the game. You can't play poker unless you do that. You have to forget everything else other than the game when you're playing poker.
What is the biggest life lesson you've learned from playing poker?
I think poker's taught me that it's not always about the there and now, but it's more about the bigger picture. I think in poker, like certain hands, you might have been far ahead and the opponent's far behind, but they catch up and they'll bink you on the river or something. But in the bigger picture, if you're always playing ahead, then you're always going to succeed, and you're always going to prosper eventually. The statistics, the percentages, if you're always playing at a high percentage, or you're always doing things which are more likely to push your life in the right direction, then you're going to always succeed.
With big risk comes big reward. If you don't take big risks, you're never going to get anywhere in life. And if you fail with your big risk, then it's always a lesson learned.
When I started playing poker now at some pub in Cardiff, playing little tournaments with random pub goers, I just thought it was simple cards. You'd think about it have to learn for about 10 minutes, and then you'd be a master at it. And then I found a couple of books online, and then it suddenly started using very confusing terms. And then I went to casinos and to UE Poker Society, and that's when I started really figuring out that it really was not as simple as it seemed. And that's carried through to other things, where I've looked at other aspects of my life and I thought, oh, that would be really easy and really simple, and actually it's a lot deeper than you think. So definitely nothing is as simple as it seems.
playing poker, how does it make you feel?
Challenged. Challenged because I want to win, and so do all the other people sitting around the table. Challenged because not only is it a game of chance, but it's what I can do with that chance that's important. To turn something that could make or break the game. On the turn of a card, I could lose or I could win. And that is a challenge, and it gets the adrenaline going. It's life, really. It's playing the game of life. Taking a chance, hoping that you've made the right decision, and ultimately connecting with other people who are all thinking the same thing. Wishing for that one card that will make all the difference.
I guess it depends how you're doing. When you've just run a successful bluff and you're raking in chips that really shouldn't be yours, you feel on top of the world. You feel as if you've just cheated death. But when you play for 8 hours in a tournament and don't even win money out of it, and you get knocked out right before the money starts being dished out, you can feel utterly soul destroyed. It's kind of like playing a game of Monopoly, as in if you're doing really well, then you feel fantastic, and if you're just doing terribly, then all you want is for the game to end.
Just feel as though I'm in the zone, not really taking any acknowledgement of anything that's going around me, just what's happening on the table and the people on the table.
How does it make you feel? Well, I don't think you can necessarily pin another emotion on playing poker. Generally for me, I feel quite happy, quite interested, because I love looking at the psychology behind the poker, thinking about what people have and don't have. And it's also not just exciting when I'm playing, but exciting to watch other people play and see how they play and work out their game. But at the same time, you can also feel very angry and annoyed if you're losing a lot of hands or not getting the cards. It really depends, again, what situation you're in. It's so diverse in poker that you can't really pin a single emotion on playing poker.
If people were to say poker is just about the money, what would you say to that?
I guess I would say to that poker has a lot of social aspects with it as well. So certainly for poker society here, but there are people I know who have never won money in our tournaments before, and yet they still keep coming back every week. And I see them, and they're laughing, they're having fun, they're joking around with people, they're being beaten in hands, they're winning hands, but they still come back every week because they like the social side of it. And definitely, especially in live poker, that's probably the most important part. Sure, a lot of people play it for money. They're poker professionals for a reason. They play it just for the money. But certainly for more recreational players, a lot of it's the social side. And also, why should poker be put in a different category from other social activities? Why do people drink? Why do people smoke? Why do people have to justify these things to other people?
Poker's based around betting, whether it be money or matchsticks, so it's always going to be, everyone's always going to have that perception of it, but there's so many different aspects to it that if you're not well educated in the game, then you're not going to know what it really is about.
I'll disagree with them. I think that until you start playing the game, like I did before, I was like, oh, it might be a quick game, a quick way to make a little bit of cash, etc. But as you delve further and further into the game, I think that poker really shows you that it's not just all about the money, it's about the psychology behind things. It's also very, very, you have to be very clever, working out statistics, what sort of percentages you have in different places, and there's such a variety of different situations that you can be in that it's really challenging in that sense. There's also like I said, the psychology behind things, working out using people's body language, the way that they're betting, what bet sizes they're making. I wouldn't, to be honest, most of the people you see nowadays, they're not too fussed about money. It's a bonus, but it's more about winning those titles and showing that you are the best at you're the best at reading people and using your skills in order to be the most profitable.
Well, of course it's about the money. Of course it's about the money. The whole point of poker is about the money. But then it has another side to it. It has sitting around the table with like-minded people who all are sharing the same experience, hopefully. And you do get a sense of being in a very small space with almost interactive thought. It's about the money. Of course it's about the money. And sharing the experience, I think, is very, very good.
Non-poker players might suggest you have no self-control and that poker is just about gambling. How would you convince them otherwise?
I think at first, definitely, was the same before I started playing poker. I think that I didn't really have much self-control, but one of the main things you have to start learning about before you play poker is about having a bankroll, keeping it completely separate from the rest of your money that you own. You only play with what you can afford, so you start off with that, and then you go up and down within that amount of money. And if you do make a profit, obviously you can take it and spend it whatever you want, but it's always good to build up a good bankroll and keep building. And therefore, if you only play to that money, and you've got a good strong will, then you can easily not get too sucked in or dragged in. The thing is, you've got to make sure that you're only playing with what you can afford, like with any sort of gambling. I mean, I don't think that poker's gambling, because if it was gambling, why were the same people winning the biggest tournaments over and over and over again? There has to be an element of skill to poker.
I think it comes down to the person playing the game. Those that are well educated in it find real enjoyment in all aspects of the game, whereas those that aren't educated in the first time players just worry about the money and not much else about it.
I think playing poker takes a great deal of self-control. First of all, probably most importantly, the amount of money that you have to play with, and reaching that limit, and then having the self-control to walk away. Secondly, poker is all about how you present yourself. People can read your body language, and they can almost guess what kind of a hand you've got. And that takes a great deal of self-control, when you, particularly if you picked up cards that you didn't particularly want, and then you have to convince the others sitting around the table that you've got a winning hand. And I think self-control is the first prerequisite for playing poker.
I guess I convinced them otherwise by asking them, have you ever had a drink before? And ever had an alcoholic drink? And if they said yes, then I would ask, oh, then that means you have no self-control and it's all just about getting wildly drunk and partying. Whereas most of the time people would say, no, that's not it at all. I just do it every now and then. I do it for a bit of fun. I have complete control over my drinking. And alcoholism and gambling are put into the same ethos of being grouped together as addictions, things that should be almost avoided, and things that should only be used in moderation, because nobody can control themselves when they're doing it. But that's definitely not the case. In fact, when I came to university, or about a year before, when I probably at my age should have been drinking a bit, I actually stayed away from alcohol, and I thought, oh, these weird people losing control all the time, like, how can you live like that? But then I came to university, and then I started to understand that alcohol is a perfectly acceptable thing in society, and that a lot of people can completely self-control how much they drink and how far they want to go with it. And it's exactly the same with poker. I suppose in modern society, in the news, people only hear about negative aspects of poker. And also there's a long-standing tradition of associating poker with organized crime because of the founding of Las Vegas, using basically organized gangsters in the 1940s after the war, just went to Vegas and started pouring their money into casinos to make a nice little profit from taking people's money. So that legacy of Vegas and the era of Stu Unger and Doyle Brunson with their high buy-in games of like potentially millions of dollars that they're playing for at a table at a time. And people haven't realized yet that it's completely changed. Poker is no longer a game for just the elites. I could go online right now onto PokerStars and I could enter into a tournament for 1 cent. Right now, I'd be up against about 1,000 people in this tournament, but I could play it for 1 cent if I wanted to. You can play for however much you want, and you have complete self-control over how much you want to spend and why you want to spend it. And at the end of the day, people have their reason for wanting to do it. Maybe they enjoy it for the structure it offers. Maybe they enjoy it for the social side. That's what I quite like about it. Maybe they enjoy it for the money. I see it in the same way as spending money on a movie ticket. I'm paying for entertainment, and at the end of the day, I get what I pay for.